We're ready for our third lesson in Unit 5. We have two more I can statements. The first one, I can model a percent on a grid. And the second one, I can write a percent as a simplified fraction. So before we actually do those things, we have to figure out what this P word means and why we care about it. So today we're really starting to introduce the idea of percents. All right, so a percent is a fraction that compares a number to 100. So I wrote it in blue here, 100. And you might have seen the percent sign. It's here, it's this big purple thing that I wrote. This is the percent sign. You can make it on your keyboard if you hold down the Shift key and the 5 button at the same time. Oftentimes we see percents after numbers. We wouldn't normally just see it hanging out by itself that big, but you might see something like 50%, or you might see something like 80%, right? We talk about the chance of having snowfall as percentages, right? So in like August, there's a 0% chance. That means it wouldn't happen at all, right? And if you looked out the window and it was snowing right now, we would call that a 100% chance, right? But I want you to notice something that my 4th grade teacher, Mr. Thorson, taught me about the percent symbol. Again, a percent is a fraction that compares a number to 100. The number 100 is hiding in this symbol. It's here somewhere. So let me show you where it is. I'm going to grab my scissors tool and I'm going to take this long bar. I'm going to move it over and I'm going to turn it a little bit so now it's up and down. And then I'm going to grab this circle and make it just a little bit bigger and move it down. And then grab this circle and make it just a little bit bigger and move it up. Now I see the number 100. So this was the percent sign, and now it's the number 100. This is how you can remember that a percent means 100. There are some other tricks too, and we'll talk about those in class. Our I can statement said that I can model a percent on a grid. So here's our first example. It says 45%. I'm going to rewrite 45% as 45 out of 100. Remember, the percent sign means 100. And if it's 45 out of 100, then that 100 can go right here. Then we have a 10 by 10 grid. It's 10 wide and it's 10 tall. If you counted each and every little square, you would have 100 of them. So 100 is the entire grid. If I'm going to color in 45% of this grid, I am going to color in, let's get rid of some of this stuff, I'm going to color in 45 out of those 100. So the easiest way for me to do this is to think, well, if it's 10 long, then here's 10, plus 10 more is 20, plus 10 more is 30, plus 10 more is 40, and then I'm going to do them individually, 41, 42, 43, 44, and 45. So this is a picture of 45%. I've colored in 45 out of 100, or I've colored in this fraction over here in red, 45 100ths, 45 out of 100 total parts. All right, so it's not so tricky if you get a 100 grid, and we're going to stay on 100 grids for the rest of today. If you need to write a percent as a fraction, first we're going to write the percent as a rate per 100 and then simplify. So that's something we actually already did. Up here, here's the fraction. Here it is, 45 on top of 100. So for the next two examples, we're going to do the second part of our I can statement. Let's go back up there, jump up there. The second part, I can write a percent as a simplified fraction. So now we're going to work on this simplified term. So it's not just on top of 100, but we're going to use smaller numbers to represent an equivalent simplified fraction. So here we go. Here's our first example. It says write 50% as a fraction in simplest form. Well, the very first thing we have to do is we have to remember that this percent sign right here is really the number 100 all scrambled up. Let me grab a smaller thing here. So that percent sign is 100. It goes on the bottom. And that number in front of the percent sign, 50, goes on the top. So 50% means 50 out of 100. Right? So immediately I can look at this grid and say, well, there's 100 little squares. So I need to color in 50 of them. So I'm going to color in, yeah, that's still pretty big, 10, 20, 30, grab a little more of that, 40, and 50. All right, so if I look carefully at what I have here, I can see that I have colored in a smaller fraction of this big square. And this one's pretty easy to see. It is our first example, but I've colored in half of this big square. I can see it by making a line across and saying this top part in blue is one part out of two equal sized parts. So I've colored in half of that big square. Another way to think about this is I'm going to divide the numerator 50 and the denominator 100 by the same number, by the greatest common factor. And we practiced a lot in December about not just using 2, but actually trying to use the number itself. So here is 50 divided by 50. 50 divided by 50 equals 1. So I'm going to do the same thing to the denominator. 100 divided by 50 equals 2. Right? And if you want to see where the 50 is in the grid, there are 50 parts. There are 50 little pieces in each part. There's 50 white pieces in that second bottom part, and there are 50 blue pieces in that top first part. All right. So we're going to do one more example before we try this out in class. Example number 2. Write 75% as a fraction in simplest form. All right, so same thing here. All right, here's my percent sign. I have to remember that that means 100. And in front is the number 75. So that is going to be our numerator. 75% means 75 out of 100. 75 out of 100. So if there are 100 little parts here, and there are, I am going to color in 75 of them. Now, I could go 10, 20, 30, 40. I could do that and get to 75. This time, I instead am going to try to make a simplified fraction. So I don't think that 100 divided by 75 is a whole number. Let's see if my calculator is still here. Pull up my calculator. See, you can do this when you're working in class as well. It's pretty quick and easy. All right, so I'm going to try that. 100 divided by 75. Oh, it gives me a decimal, so that doesn't work. So I can't divide by 75, but I want to try that first. All right, so it's a little bit tricky. I don't think I can divide 75 by 2, right? No, that doesn't work. And 75 doesn't end in 0. I know I can divide 75 by 5. 75 divided by 5. I know that works because 75 ends in 5. But there's a bigger number I can divide them by. If I think about having 75 cents, 75 cents out of 100 cents to make $1, that would be like having 3 quarters. A quarter is 25 cents, so I'm going to divide by 25 cents. All right, 75 cents divided by groups of 25 cents would give us 3 quarters, and 100 cents divided by groups of 25 cents would give us 4 quarters, right? So 75 cents is 3/4 or 3/4 of a dollar, right? And let's just check. 75 divided by 25 is 3, good. 100 divided by 4 is, whoa, wrong number. 100 divided by 25, there we go, is 4. All right, so I am now going to use this fraction, 3/4, this fraction right here, 3/4. I'm going to use that fraction to draw out 75% in simplest form. So the denominator is 4. I'm going to make 4 equal parts. Sometimes kids want to do this. Let's grab a color that maybe you can see. Make a line straight down the middle. And then they try and make a line down each side here. And you can see that the problem is we're going to have a bunch of squares that are cut in half. So that doesn't really work. But instead, if I take this line here and I flip it and make kind of like a giant red plus, now I have 4 equal parts. And interestingly, if I counted how many little squares are inside this top left part, I get 25. And there's 25 in this part, and there's 25 in this part, and there's 25 in this part. That's this divide by 25 right here. We took 100, all of them, and split them into groups of 25, and now we have 4 parts. Here they are. 1 part, 2 parts, 3 parts, 4 parts. So if I wanted to color in 75%, I have 4 parts. I have 4 parts, but now I would need to color in 3 out of those 4. So here they are. My first part, there's 25. My second part, there's 25 more, so that's now 50. 25 plus 25 is 50, plus 1 more big part. 50 plus 25 is 75. So yes, I could have just colored in 75 of them right away, but if I just color in 75, I have trouble seeing that it's really the fraction 3/4, right? So this way, if I can simplify it to 3/4, now I can see that 75% is in fact equivalent to 3/4. 75, whoa, let's try one more time, Mrs. Twevila. 75% is the same as the fraction 3/4.